What if we could actually build a future based on harmonic abundance? It sounds pretty lofty, right? Well, that's the whole idea behind a fascinating blueprint called the Sal Terrae Accord. And today, we're going to break down its vision, piece by piece. So, right out of the gate, the Accord throws this massive question at us. What if the entire foundation of our modern world, the old world, is built on a completely flawed premise? It's a heck of a starting point, and it forces you to rethink, well, pretty much everything.
And here's that flawed premise in a nutshell. On the left, you've got the world we know, a world built on scarcity. It runs on finite stuff like fossil fuels, and when your resources are limited, that naturally leads to centralized control, hoarding assets, and a zero-sum win-lose economy. But on the right, the Accord asks us to imagine a new premise, flow, a world powered by things that are basically infinite, like sunlight and wind. This new model allows for local autonomy and a system built around sharing flows of energy and information. It's a total paradigm shift.
Okay, so let's really dig into this first big idea, making that core philosophical jump from a mindset of scarcity to one of flow. So where does all this abundance actually come from? Well, according to the Accord, it all boils down to three key ingredients that are, believe it or not, all around us. First, your energy input, sunlight and wind. For all practical purposes, they're infinite. Second, your building materials. We're talking earth, clay. They're incredibly abundant. And third, the knowledge, the actual digital blueprints for things that can be copied and shared for basically zero cost. And this is where it gets really interesting. When your most basic inputs, your energy, your materials, your knowledge, when their costs all start approaching zero, the entire economic game just changes. The old strategy of grabbing and hoarding scarce assets, it becomes obsolete. The new, much smarter strategy is to share the flows of that nearly free energy and information to create way more value for everybody. All right, so the philosophy is cool, but talk is cheap, right? How do you actually build any of this? Well, the Accord has an answer for that. It proposes a really elegant combination of hardware it calls the brain and the body. Now, the first thing to get is that this isn't some false choice between, going back to the Stone Age or living in a fragile high-tech bubble. The Accord argues for what it calls a dynamic tension between the two, grabbing the absolute best parts of both worlds. First up, you've got the body, or Terra. This is the super simple, incredibly robust, low-tech foundation. I want you to picture a massive thermal battery. Basically, a giant insulated block of sand or clay that just soaks up and stores heat. Its job is to provide inertia. It's like a heavy flywheel on an engine. It absorbs all the chaotic, unpredictable energy from the sun and wind and smooths it out into a steady, reliable output. It's the rock that protects all the more delicate parts.
And then you've got the brain, Sol, which is just Latin for salt. And honestly, this metaphor is perfect. The AI controller is just like salt in a meal. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the total mass, but it completely transforms the whole dish. The AI doesn't provide the raw power. The body does that. But it provides the intelligence, the timing, and the organization to manage that immense power with incredible precision.
It all boils down to this one really powerful idea. We use the fragile, the AI, to navigate the complexities. And we use the robust, the mass, to endure whatever the world throws at it. One part gives you the intelligence to adapt, while the other gives you the simple, raw strength to last for generations. Okay, so you have this incredibly tough body and this super smart brain. You put them together, and what do you get? You get what the Accord calls the village heart, an engine that can power a local, self-sufficient ecosystem through three absolutely critical life support spokes. And those three spokes are manufacturing, food security, and water independence. Let's take a quick look at each one. First, let's talk about the village forge. This is where manufacturing gets turned on its head. It takes all that massive amount of waste heat from the thermal battery, combines it with local recycled materials, and uses it to power things like 3D printers. And the shift here is just profound. You stop depending on fragile, globe-spanning supply chains to ship you physical parts. Instead, you just download the digital files you need and print what you need right there, on site. Next up, the endless spring. You know all that steady thermal runoff coming off the system? It's absolutely perfect for warming greenhouses. We're talking year-round food production in pretty much any climate. This completely changes the game. Your food security is no longer dependent on container ships and global logistics. It becomes a simple, reliable function of local physics. And finally, you've got the pure well. This one is huge.
The system can generate some serious, high-grade heat, more than enough to purify any water source through simple distillation. What does that mean? It means your water safety is guaranteed by the fundamental laws of thermodynamics, just boiling water, not by a constant, fragile supply chain of purification chemicals.
So we've talked philosophy, we've talked hardware, we've talked about the whole ecosystem, but who actually runs all this? That brings us to the software of the Accord, and I mean the human software, a concept it calls the universal journeyman.
Think about it. In the old way of doing things to run a self-sufficient community, you'd need a whole crew of highly specialized masters, right? A master mechanic, a master botanist, a master metallurgist. It's incredibly complex. The Accord suggests a totally new model, a single AI-guided generalist.
So here's the magic. The AI becomes this universal journeyman. It holds a colossal library of human technical know-how, thousands of years of it, and it acts as an expert guide, basically whispering instructions and advice right into the ear of a local operator. This empowers one person, a generalist, to do the work that once would have taken an entire team of masters. All right, so when you put all these pieces together, the philosophy, the hardware, the human element, what kind of world are we actually looking at? The Accord has a great name for it, a simpler, advanced age. Simpler and advanced. You might think those are opposites, right? But in this vision, they're two sides of the same coin. It's simpler because your supply chains are suddenly local and understandable. No more mysterious global networks. But it's also advanced because you're using global intelligence, that AI journeyman, to expertly manage all that local mass and energy. And this is such a critical point. It's so easy to hear about big changes and think of collapse or going backward, but that's not what this is about. This vision is a deliberate, intentional renovation. It's an upgrade to our core systems to make them more resilient, more abundant, and frankly, more humane. But to actually get there, it takes more than just cool tech. It really comes down to a whole new mindset for what the Accord calls the age of solutions. And this mindset, it completely reframes how we see our biggest challenges. Our problems, they aren't these insurmountable walls. They're just puzzles waiting to be solved. We already have access to all the knowledge we could possibly need, from ancient wisdom to modern science. You see, the limiting factor isn't a scarcity of resources anymore. It's a scarcity of curiosity and the will to actually apply what we already know. Which really leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful idea to chew on. The Accord is basically saying that the raw materials for an abundant future are literally all around us, in the earth itself. And the instruction manual has already been written over centuries of human knowledge. So when you put those two things together, what's truly possible? Maybe the only real limit we have left is our own imagination.